Hello and welcome to Films and That. My name's Rob Turnbull.
And my name's Sam Hall.
Today we're looking at the anime Cowboy Bebop, and this is one of my favourite animes actually, so I just wanted to give it a go and have a look at it.
Oh cool, okay, let's go.
A group of misfits travel the solar system trying to make ends meet as bounty hunters on a repurposed fishing ship named the Bebop. This review contains spoilers. The reason I wanted to do this is because it's an anime that is not too anime, if you know what I mean. It's not too
I think I
top.
do. There's a lot of anime that are about people getting into fights that are mainly talking for about half an hour and then the fighting is about 5 minutes.
Which are entertaining, but they're all about the end of the world, you know? And every episode of Cowboy Bebop is about small struggles and real world struggles with people in the lived in world, and I really love that aspect of it.
Yeah, it seems to be quite Western inspired.
Well, quite literally. So the bounty hunters in the show call themselves cowboys, and they watch this wanted poster type show.
It's like Crime Watch.
That's where they get their information about who to hunt down. What surprised me about it was how it's embedded in realism. So a lot of the way the ships work makes sense in a physical world, you know? And there's things like they're stuck in space traffic at certain points. Every ship that the main characters use seems to be repurposed from something else. So the Bebop itself is a fishing ship, and the main character's fighter jet is like a racecraft. And there's things that aren't mentioned, like Faye's ship, for instance. It's got missiles and guns on it. But then later on you see like clampy things, and then you realise, oh, it's a cargo loader that she's using, that she's repurposed for some reason. Someone's gone to the trouble of thinking about that, thinking what would she get her hands on, what would she want? She wants a ship that's mobile and can move around quite a lot. So she's bought something cheap and then retrofitted guns onto it.
It's away from our sort of consumerist world, where everything is built for a specific purpose and you can get multiple different things of everything. And they're living in a world where they kind of have to make do with what they've got.
Yeah.
Which makes it feel more grounded.
Exactly, yeah. And I like that there's not a line of dialogue where she goes, my ship's a cargo loader, but I retrofitted it with missiles. No one says that. You just got to figure that out. And I love that because it engages you in the world more doing that way, rather than having things explained to you. It makes you pay attention.
The lack of exposition is definitely one of its strengths. I think studios underestimate how people can read things.
Yeah.
I think there's too much emphasis on exposition these days, which is weird because if you go in like a screenwriting class or something, they always talk about exposition as being like the worst thing.
Yeah.
And yet it feels like in so many movies now, there is exposition all the time.
And it seems like a studio decision that they're just terrified people won't understand it, and therefore they would lose money.
So I think they should, respect their audiences more. And I think Cowboy Bebop does that. Also, there's a lot of reflection of like ordinary people in it as well, who you don't normally see in a lot of big sci-fi stuff, like Star Trek, for example. It's always about military people and important dignitaries and so on. And in this, like, there's people who run bars and just regular, even bystanders sometimes.
The main character is called Spike, and he works on this spaceship that's owned by his mate Jet, and they go around collecting bounties. But they never seem to be very good at it. They never seem to be very profitable. They're always like struggling to eat and find fuel.
Which is odd because they all seem quite like skilled in terms of like, I mean, Spike especially, he has this jujitsu style of fighting where you use your own momentum to fight people, and he totally overpowers like huge groups of people. They never seem happy. They're always kind of at odds with each other, and like you said, they never seem to have any food or whatever.
They're joined by a few other characters. So we've got Faye, who doesn't know her past, and she's a kind of like loose cannon. She's got a lot of debt. A child who you hate,
called Ed. I know this is a big faux pas, but I haven't actually seen the Japanese voice version of it. I've only seen the English dub, and in the English dub, at least, I find the voice and mannerisms of Ed quite grating, a bit like nails on a chalkboard. And I know that the character is beloved and very popular. I know how popular the show is and stuff. Ed really, really irritates me, and I've really, really tried to get over that, but I haven't been able to, I'm afraid.
I do like how everyone else just seems to ignore her most of the time. At one point, she gets electrocuted, and they're like, "Is she dead?" And she wakes up and like, okay, back to what we're talking about.
Is Ed meant to be like gender fluid or just non-specific, or?
It's non-specific, but she is a girl. People keep mentioning that. It's kind of like a point, isn't it? Even her father at one point goes, "Are you a girl or a boy?"
Yeah.
But yeah, and they're also joined by a dog who's super smart, but no one in the Bebop actually seems to know that.
But it's just kind of there though for being cutesy, right?
Yeah. It's kind of like a sitcom in many ways, because they don't really get on, or they disagree a lot. So there's lots of bickering that goes on between them as they all try and get as much money as they can.
A hell of a lot of anime is about heroes, and none of these people, they're not going to change the world or whatever. It's all about their story and their lives. There are, grander themes overall, but I mean, within their story, it's quite contained.
Exactly, and every episode is focused around, they've got a bounty to get, but then there's something that complicates that leads into their backstory. So like an old acquaintance is now married to someone who becomes their bounty. So it's all about the moral dilemma of, do they get the bounty and trade in this person that has committed crimes, or do they help their old friends? So there's lots of things going on about that. And I think that's why they are poor all the time, is because they always take the moral high ground. They don't screw people over for money. So really, there aren't any bad episodes, I wouldn't have said. There are some episodes which are like less than others, but there's no episodes that I'm just like, oh, that was just filler. And I think that probably helps it being an anime. Every minute has to be carefully thought out, if you know what I mean? Because there's a lot of cost involved into actually hand drawing a lot of this.
I'd say that the animation is one of the things that really could draw people to it, because it is extremely detailed and there's so many different things going on within the frame. It's full of junk and random little objects all over the place that give it a more kind of detailed, interesting, realistic feel. It really does feel like they've put so much effort into each cell, is it? The animation? Yeah.
And I think that also helps the action sequences, because the episodes are 20 minutes long-ish.
Yeah.
So they have to be really brief with the action. And there is actually a movie spin-off episode, which is 115 minutes long, and that goes full into the action, and there's like 15-minute action sequences, which wouldn't have worked in the TV. And I think the TV is much better for it. It gets in there, it says what it needs to say, and then it moves on and goes somewhere else.
Each episode, pretty much, apart from the two-parters, is, self-contained. So the thing that connects everything is the characters, developing the characters, giving them an arc and things like that. One of my favourite actually self-contained episodes is the one who's trying to get, is it the flower or something that would to help his sister?
Yeah, so there's this special flower that only grows in a certain area. he can use that to help his sister see. So I think he gets involved in crime to get this flower, but then they're trying to get it back, these gangsters. So that's why he's on the wanted list.
Yeah.
And he befriends Spike. And so there's this moral dilemma of what does Spike do with that flower?
I like the little kind of self-contained humanity of it, because these two people aren't significant, him and his sister. I think it's important sometimes to have these like little simple stories, you know. That Studio Ghibli film we did, Grave of the Fireflies, you know, again, that was just about two completely insignificant people, but it came across for me as a more significant and powerful story. It wasn't about kings and princesses and so on and so forth.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? Like, the smaller you go, the more important it seems, because if you feel like it actually could happen and it actually makes a difference to you if you were in that situation.
賞金稼ぎなんだな。俺を捕まえるために来たのか。
ステラにはこいつが必要なんだろう。
逃げるんだ。あんた殺されるよ。
And a lot of the episodes are quite tragic, but that doesn't mean to say there's not a lot of humour in there.
The fridge episode, can I call it that?
Yeah.
There's a thing that escapes on the ship, and there's a theme involving a fridge. Is that a theme? I don't know. There's a plot line involving a fridge.
Well, basically, Spike leaves a lobster in the fridge and it kind of goes off and then becomes this other life form. It then turns into alien and kind of goes around the ship.
Yeah, reference like Dark Star,
Yeah.
Red Dwarf did an episode like that as well. Something stuck on the ship, nobody knows what it is, and it picks people off one by one.
The whole episode is them trying to get rid of this thing, and like casually Ed just eats it, and then that's it. Everyone's fine after that. So there's a real kind of like light-hearted twist to that episode. So there's a lot of ups and downs is what I'm getting at. I do miss self-contained episodes. I think it's gone out of fashion a bit. But I think you can play around with different genres. So you can have a silly episode one week, then a serious one the next. Whereas that wouldn't work in a more serialized drama, like Game of Thrones or something. You have to kind of follow the same story and the same tone throughout, otherwise it gets weird.
Yeah, you can't deviate too much from the theme, especially if you've had like, you know, just the previous episode is something incredibly dark. You need a bit of a let up, but you can't completely juxtapose and go, oh, now we're doing a comedy episode after we killed off a few major characters.
冷蔵庫の中のものは入れっぱなしにしちゃいけない。
So do you have a favourite character in it?
Personally, I'd probably say it would be Faye.
Yeah, me too.
And initially, they make her out to be quite deliberately probably unlikable because she's very, very shallow. You kind of find out later on that it's kind of a front because she lacks a personality of her own because her past has been obscured and she doesn't know who she really is.
She doesn't have anyone in her life apart from these strangers that she's just met.
There's even one episode, isn't there, where she's been captured and they're like, no, you're going to have to deal with that yourself.
Yeah.
And she's literally going, help me. They're like, don't care, we've got stuff to do.
Yeah.
へへ、捕まってしまいました。
重っ。
これから指定する場所に来い。さもないと私の命はないぞ。
自業自得だ。自分で落とし前をつけるんだな。
ね、ちょっと。
And one of my favourite episodes was when she kind of has a meltdown and she leaves the Bebop, but she takes all their money. It's kind of like a cry for help, really, isn't it? So that they will follow her. It's really about what she doesn't say in that one. She really wants them to come after her. And they do, even though Jet knows that there wasn't any money in the safe. So there is a unwritten kind of love there for all the different crew.
Yeah, they don't like express it necessarily.
なんで来たの？
金返せ。
金庫
あ
2万しか入ってなかったけど。
そうだったか
It is interesting that not everyone's in every episode. Like, going back to Star Trek, you would have the whole crew there for every single episode. And Faye doesn't even join the show till like the third or fourth episode.
Yes, there was a lovely period before Ed joined the crew. I quite appreciated. That was one thing I found quite strange about it, actually, going in. Maybe trying to sort of match up what TV is now to what that was. This is like a continuous thing, right? But each episode seems self-contained. But then we're adding to the crew as we go along. I found it strange that all the characters weren't in the first episode, basically.
Yeah, because that's normally what you would do. You'd have an episode where you met everyone, and then in every episode after that would be them going on adventures. But there are episodes where, like in the middle of the series, where Faye's just not in it, like she's just buggered off somewhere, and it's just the other two that have to deal with the situation on their own. These aren't people that need to be together. They're not family. They're not in some kind of military organisation. They can just bugger off. And that's actually probably what they would do.
Yeah, I guess maybe that's a big part of it. They just kind of find that they need each other. They don't necessarily do it out of a deep love for each other. It's just it's kind of circumstantial because really they're just colleagues.
I do quite like that there's not a lot of sex in it. No one's like perving over Faye.
You mean out of the main characters?
But I sort of expected once Faye came on board, I expected Spike to then fall in love with her or something, because that's what happens. That's the trope, isn't it? He just doesn't give a shit about her at all.
じゃあ私はシャワー浴びてくるから。
また次稼ぎましょう。おまけにシャワーまで勝手に。おい、ほっといていいのか？
I don't know, I just get bored by love stories a lot of the time. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that was one of the things that I struggled to connect with Spike's subplot. Especially as we're only introduced to his love interest right at the end. And then we know her for all of like 5 minutes or whatever. The thing about Spike isn't there an episode where they've got the whole crew together and he complains to Jet, he says, one thing I can't stand or something is women, children and dogs
Yeah,
or pets
like
or something.
that, yeah.
And I thought, well, women, children and pets, what are you, a monster? That's not a nice quality to have.
No.
Who doesn't like dogs?
俺の嫌いなもんが3つあるって知ってたか？さあな、ガキとケダモンと跳ねっ返りの女だ。
All the characters have their flaws. It would have been easy to write Spike as a very unlikable character by accident because he's quite arrogant, he's quite aloof. He doesn't take anything seriously. He is likeable. And I think that's because he always does the right thing. And you kind of know he doesn't really mean it half the time. He's just kind of mouthing off.
He's another one who puts on a front as well.
Yeah.
Tries to pretend that he's more isolated or whatever than he really wants to be. And that's the one thing. Ed doesn't really seem to be motivated by morals or whatever, guided by things like that. They're just kind of guided by whatever they feel like at the time.
One of my favourite Ed moments is when she's playing chess against this like grand wizard who no one can beat. And she's almost at the point of beating him. And then she goes, no. And she moves the chess piece away.
チェックメイトと見せかけて大手飛車取り
Just like she's fucking with him. Like she doesn't care about actually winning the game. She just enjoys the playing the game itself.
ちょっとあんた、そんなゲームばっかりやってないで、ちょっと手伝え。
I know she's a bit annoying, but do you not like her character?
No.
I quite like how irreverent she is. Like she doesn't seem to care about a lot of things. She just does what she wants most of the time.
Yeah, I can't really relate to that. Those are the kind of people I don't like to be around.
Huh?
Teddy Bomber, I remember that one.
Yeah,
That one was mainly just about...
the horse guy.
Yeah, it was like, it's the centre of it is they're trying to track down a terrorist, but they're more concerned with this rivalry that Spike has with an incompetent cowboy.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that because that was one of the standout kind of comedy episodes. Because initially they're trying to catch this bomber who puts bombs in teddies and then like tries to blow up buildings. It's a situation where two bounty hunters, so Spike and this other guy, I think he's called Domino, is he? Something like that? Andy.
Yeah,
Where did I
Andy.
get Domino from? Was Domino the name of his horse?
I don't know.
Spike and Andy are both trying to get this teddy bomber, and this Andy guy keeps arresting Spike for it because he's at the scene of the crime.
It's a whole thing about, I guess, a comedy of errors, farcical thing. But this cowboy guy he seems kind of incompetent, but he has this sort of like belief in himself that he's the hero of the hour.
I really like the last encounter that they have. So the teddy bomber has laid some traps. Spike then gets there and the teddy bomber's like, I knew you'd come. And then Spike's just not interested in him at all because he knows this other Andy guy's going to turn up. So he keeps keeping an eye out for this Andy. And doesn't care about the actual guy. And the teddy bomber gets really annoyed because no one's paying attention to him.
Don't care about his motives or anything.
No. Yeah, he's trying to like make a point about capitalism and no one cares because they've got this stupid rivalry.
私がなぜ爆破を繰り返すのか。それは
今日こそははっきりと決着をつけてやる。
何？こっちのセリフだ。聞け、人の話を。
It's like you said, they're all self-contained and they do jump between different genres. Pierrot Le Fou is a bit of a strange episode with a kind of bizarre, monstrous villain who seems too powerful or whatever, or too strong. I think he's like the result of some kind of genetic experiment. But he's gone insane, hasn't he? And he's turned into a kind of almost like the Joker or a kind of Batman villain. And I found that to be really interesting. But it almost has elements of horror in it.
奴こそマッドピエロと呼ばれる幻の殺し屋トンプ。
And then you've got all these comedy episodes. You've got episodes that are more like gangster films or westerns. It's a really strange program in that sense. It's almost a little bit mismatched in places for me, but because of the way it jumps between so many different themes and genres.
It's difficult to describe the series as a whole because every episode is so different. But that's what I liked about it. I liked not knowing where it was going every time. So I never got bored of it. I always was like, what are they going to do this time? That Pierrot Le Fou.
Pierrot Le Fou. Pierrot, I think, yeah.
Pierrot.
Yeah.
That Pierrot Le Fou episode, that has a really bizarre ending. Doesn't Spike like throw a knife at him and it hits him and he starts like crying like a child? There's a big like animatronic dog that just kind of steps on him. And that's how he defeats the baddie in the end.
スパイグ、いいか。奴の正体が分かった。奴は。
もういいんだ。
There's only one season of this, and it's got quite a tragic ending. Ed and Ein leave the ship. Spike confronts his old nemesis. There's like a battle to the death. That was my least favourite story arc of the whole thing, was that whole thing with Vicious, because that's when it did turn into kind of bullshit anime territory for me. And so the final shot is him just dying. That's the end of the season. Imagine if that's what happened in Star Trek. Captain Picard just got killed at the end.
That happened, didn't it? But it was okay. They just brought him back as a robot.
I haven't watched that because it's garbage.
It's more poignant. I think the problem is that I reckon there probably are a lot of people who are like, so when's the next season of Cowboy Bebop? Oh, there isn't one. It never happened.
Yeah. So they weren't afraid to just kill the character off after one season. And I think that's really interesting. And I think they probably had said all that they wanted to say with the character. And it didn't outstay its welcome. I think that's the running theme for me for Cowboy Bebop. The episodes are really short. There's a lot to like in there. And there's about 25 episodes, I think, something like that.
26.
Yeah, I could probably look, couldn't I? 26, and then there's that film.
But didn't Netflix do a remake, though, that is quite badly received?
Yeah, I watched maybe half of one episode and was like, nah, I'm not watching this.
Who are you supposed to be?
Jet Black, meet Faye Valentine.
Hey, fuck you!
I haven't seen it at all, but I did watch a Super Eye Patch Wolf review of it. Yeah. And yeah, it was quite damning.
They just don't understand what it was, I think. And I also think it was a product of its time. I don't think it would work now because it needed that episodic structure. It was made by Americans for one thing.
and for Netflix as well,
Yeah.
which doesn't ever do episodic stuff.
No.
負けるな負けるな
思い出せない。
頑張れ頑張れ
これは私。
I feel really sorry for Faye. She was in this coma, she forgot who she was, and she got scammed.
Immediately, without even realising.
Yeah. By this person that pretended to be in love with her. She's quite lonely, and then she discovers something about her backstory and her previous life. So she kind of investigates that and discovers that there's nothing left of it. So there's no one left for her except Spike and Jet. And then this is the point when Spike decides to go off and sacrifice himself. And there's a real kind of heartbreaking moment when she doesn't want him to leave.
わざわざ命を捨てに行くってわけ
死にに行くわけじゃない。俺が本当に生きてるかどうか確かめに行くんだ。
She's just about realised that that's who she should be with. You know, that's her family now. Spike's about to throw us all away.
Yeah, Faye in particular, she just can't connect with anyone. Anybody who she has connected with has, you know, dropped her in it or left her behind. So, yeah, I guess in that respect, you know, that she's like the loneliest character.
Fuck you!
Okay, Sam, what did you think of Cowboy Bebop? Have you seen it before, actually?
Not before you recommended it, no. I'd heard of it. So what I'm about to say is going to be a little bit contentious.
You didn't like it?
No, I didn't. It's not. Not that I didn't like it. I think it's that I was very aware of its reputation, and I was very aware that people adored it and loved it so much, and so I went into it waiting for the genius to unfurl, and I got to the end of it, and I was like, well, okay. I'm thinking maybe it didn't resonate with me so much as it does with a lot of people. I like the fact that they're going for something that's a bit different, a bit more episodic, and it's about self-contained. It's more about the character-driven stuff, you know. So I can't really explain it, but for whatever reason, it just didn't make me laugh and cry and fall in love with it the way that a lot of other people have. Maybe it was too high a bar for them to set for me, listening to all these other YouTubers and creators and people and reviews talk about it like it was the most groundbreaking thing. But no, I definitely don't hate it. The English dub of Ed really did irritate me a lot.
Try watching the Japanese, see if you're feeling different.
Yeah, okay.
But I think expectation is a dangerous thing. I went into it fairly blind quite a few years ago now. And in fact, the first time I watched it, I got halfway through, like maybe 10 episodes in, and I stopped watching it because I didn't want for it to end. So I always wanted to have episodes of that to watch in the future. So I just, for about 2 or 3 years, just stopped watching it.
Oh, okay.
Not really intentionally, but I was like, I don't want to get to the point where I've seen all the episodes. I want always to be excited that there's another episode coming up. So I was the complete opposite of you, I think.
Oh, okay. Actually, I think I didn't realise going in, even though I knew that people loved it, I didn't know it was one series. I just assumed there was, you know, quite a few series or whatever. And I didn't really check the episode count before. And actually, when it did end, I thought, well, I could have done with more of that, to be fair.
Yeah.
I was just expecting, another series or whatever. So maybe it was like an unfinished meal for me, or whatever, where I felt like, I wanted a bit more from it.
Yeah, I really like it. Every episode, I was really engrossed in the world. And reading subtitles, I sometimes would just rewind it to watch the visuals so that you can really grasp everything that's on screen, because it is so dense in a good way. There's just so much world building there, and I love world building, I love realism. There is a lot to like about it.
ECM か。安物はダメか。
Okay, that's it for this time on Films and That. Thanks for watching and subscribing. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider supporting Films and That on Patreon, and we'll see you next time.
Goodbye.